let's get to our Heisman watch because we have a couple of Big Ten players in action coming up later today. There we go. The Heisman animation as we look at C.J. Stroud, who you see the numbers, Wes. It has been so impressive. He got that natural bump after being named the starter preseason. Was in that 15-1 range down to 12-1. And kind of, you talk about forgotten teams. Not that Ohio State has been a forgotten team, but after the loss to Oregon week 2, people kind of said, all right, well, clearly this team isn't going to do anything and not be in the mix for the college football playoff. But since then, they have just been destroying everybody in their path. And you look at the numbers for Stroud, those odds at 8-1 at BetMGM, not that much shorter from where he closed preseason at around 11 or 12-1. Got a lot of late money there, Wes. Any value still to be had on a guy like Stroud, especially with how well Ohio State's been playing over the last month?
I think there could be. And Ohio State, by the way, not forgotten by me, because my alma mater, the Indiana Hoosiers, will host them tonight in prime time. So unfortunate that maybe they're going to get a beat down in prime time, but I do actually kind of lean Indiana in the points. We'll get to that game later more in depth. But remember Indiana last year against Ohio State when they got down early in Columbus? Indiana is probably the team that kind of sunk Justin Fields' Heisman campaign, and plus COVID-19 did a lot of help in terms of the shuffling of the scheduling. But Justin Fields had a couple turnovers in that game. Michael Penix for Indiana ended up throwing almost 500 yards, and Indiana actually cut it to a one-score game, had a small chance at the end, couldn't get over the hump. But C.J. Stroud, I will say, and you're going to look at Indiana and say, this team's not very good. They're 2-4. Keep in mind they've lost to 4 top 10 teams this year. They've lost to Iowa. They've lost to Michigan State. They've lost to Cincinnati. And then some other one that beat Penn State. Penn State was the 4th one. So this is a actual good defense for Indiana. Offensively, this team is not much to write home about, and they're going to struggle keeping up, going score for score with Ohio State. But they've got a really good secondary, and they've got a really good linebacking core. Indiana's got at least a couple NFL guys on this defense. So this isn't like hot knife through butter that Ohio State had with Rutgers and with Maryland previously. And then, of course, they had the bye week last week. So, if Stroud can, not have one of those games where he has a bunch of turnovers, by the way, the total has come down from 60 to about 59.5, 59 pretty much market wide. So maybe small respect for Indiana's defense. But look, if he has a good game against Indiana, I know people say, it's 2-4 here. Not so fast, though, because this is a legitimate good defense with good players on the side. So this could be something to bolster Stroud's campaign. And if I was looking at kind of more of the chalky guys that we were talking about, and I think we're not going to get to it in this segment, but Bryce Young, Matt Corral, still both 2-1. That's pretty much where they were last week. If I was looking for a guy near the top that I was trying to skirt those guys, because this very well could be a weird year where you have somebody come a little bit out of nowhere, and we'll profile a couple of those guys later in the program. C.J. Stroud probably is the safest of those guys.
Well, you think about weird year. Normally we think of this award as that just by nature quarterback award, and at the same time, we've seen some running backs put up gaudy numbers this year. You saw in the odds a moment ago that Bijan Robinson has been maybe the most hyped running back talked about, at least in the media this year, but he's on a Texas team that's certainly not that good. They've lost twice, actually lost 3 times now, and a couple in a row. So even though the numbers are great, I'm not sure you can really take him all that seriously.
It is tough in the Heisman to really give,
right.
Because it's almost like a team award in a way that it's like the best player on the most high-profile team. You very rarely see a guy that's on a 9-3 team or an 8-4 team win the Heisman Trophy anymore, especially with so much television on here and so much showcase going on. And
it's like, well, having said that, though, I mean, you've Kenneth Walker III. That's the one scenario why we bring this up. Well, okay, theoretically, Michigan State, they're still undefeated, West. They could, and they are on a bye week this week, but as you talked about, big showdown coming up next week. Like, they could be in a spot to, like, he's at 14-1. You never know. That's at least the one position, West, where if you're going to go down the whole, weird year theory, maybe there is a path for Walker.
I'm a little surprised that Walker didn't drift up, though, a little bit. Obviously, now 14-1. He has been putting up great numbers. You look at what he did, and I'll go back to that Indiana defense we were talking about with C.J. Stroud. Only 84 yards for Kenneth Walker. And yet Indiana found a way to lose a game. They absolutely shut Michigan State down. and I think they had like 241 yards, well below their average. But Indiana finds a way to lose, but I digress. But I'm surprised Kenneth Walker didn't drift up into like the 20s or the 30s, because that was not a very impressive performance, but he is going to have opportunities, and that's probably why he hasn't drifted up, because you are still going to get Michigan on the schedule. You are still going to get Ohio State on the schedule. You are still going to get Penn State on the schedule. So those are 3 showcase games. Those are 3 top 10 teams. So that's probably why they didn't drift Walker up to like the 20-1 or 25-1 range, because he's still got opportunity to impress.
Right, and we'll see. And like Michigan State, I don't know your thoughts on betting these guys when they're on a bye. It's probably not going to change the odds whatsoever, but you wonder. I mean, you think about Michigan State going forward and the tough spots. It's like, would you be in a situation almost just compare the Big Ten odds with where Walker's Heisman odds are at? Because still, Michigan State's, you think about, not many people assuming they can actually do this, and when I say do this, that is actually run the table and win the Big Ten. I don't know. I think the odds there. I mean, you're still in like the 15-1 range with them. Michigan State, it's roughly the same as what Kenneth Walker III would be to win the Heisman. So I don't know. It's an interesting correlation.
And you look at next week's spot, because I think Michigan State, I don't want to disrespect those guys, but they should have gotten beat by Indiana last week. They were absolutely outplayed. Indiana made mistakes, couldn't generate offense, some bad coaching, some bad clock management. So is Michigan State kind of on borrowed time here? They're going to get Michigan.
You could
next
argue
week.
Nebraska too was a game they got very fortunate to win as well.
Yeah, they should have probably lost that game. And by the way, Michigan State is going to get Michigan for that Paul Bunyan Trophy next week in East Lansing. Yeah. Of course, a payback spot for Harbaugh. By the way, Michigan in action about midway through the first quarter. No score yet. Michigan down to 19.5, 44.5 on the total.
Okay.